Hello, how you doing? Today's Friday, and we'll continue with the story of Rod and Gab. We're going to talk about the metal years. This is the second episode. So, hello, Gabriela.
Hello, Rodrigo.
So,
So we hope you're happy and healthy and all of that at home. And so we're gonna continue. So the metal years. So what about those? Okay, what happened was that me and Rodrigo at last we were just playing in Tierra Ácida for like formally, uh, just in our practice room basically with Edgardo and Cesar, and we didn't really have any gigs. It was hard to get gigs, and we also were trying to be the managers of our own band.
can I ask you a question that probably some people would actually wonder? How was the metal scene in Mexico in the early 90s?
Well, statistically, I don't know, but under my experience, um, metal music is huge in Mexico. It's really huge, and in the 90s there was all of this scene that is all it was all underground. So you relied on little magazines, and there was a community already. Fanzines in Mexico City. There was a community of metal heads that usually we reunited on Saturday around Mexico City Center.
Yeah,
kind
close
of
to the
thing.
center, yeah.
And they put this sort of markets where you can get a lot of albums, cassettes. Um, you can also get like T-shirts from your favorite bands, and that's where all of the hot new bands where you can get all this new music from
Yes, and
all over the world.
today is still there. It's called Chopo, but it's different. I haven't been there, but I've heard it's different. But just to point out that there was like street market back in the day. I don't know when was the first year of the Chopo market, but we started going there in 1990, right? And there were no stands even. They were on the floor, like they would sell all the tapes, the cassettes, and all that, and T-shirts on the floor. And it was quite small, right? Like I don't know, but really small. Now it's like a few streets.
Oh, really?
Yeah,
I haven't been.
and they sell like football T-shirts and all that. It's like yeah,
No, back then
it's
it
just
was
music,
it was
just metal.
metal music, but
Well,
also
some
you can get
yeah.
a lot of like all the
Underground,
non-mainstream
yeah.
stuff, even like a singer-songwriter type of thing that we call trova, which is almost sometimes.
Would you get that? Too?
Yeah, I remember there was a few of those that you can get. Silvio Rodriguez or Pablo Milanés or all of those, and so it was all the underdogs. So we usually arrived in the metro and then walked a few blocks, and that's
Yes,
where.
and you'll see that you follow. If you don't know, if you didn't know the place, it was easy. You just get off on that station, stop. Sorry, the metro stop, and then you would follow.
Oh, the
black,
metalheads.
yeah, the guys with the long hair and the leather jackets. It was
Yes,
funny,
so
yeah.
why metal music is so big in Mexico, I don't know, and we can just guess. I can come up with crazy theories, but this is not the place. So we're talking about our years. So then we went there also because that's where all the bookers, like the promoters and agents,
Well, the two,
were.
the three bookers.
There were three, and they booked these type of gigs. They were just massive, and they were almost like illegal in a way, because some of them they were just organized in a parking lot, or
Yeah.
some very sophisticated
We
place
call them
like the parking
we call
lot.
them funky holes.
Funky holes, because
Yeah.
they were not fancy at all, and that's where they built like this some sort of little festivals with a lot of bands.
Yeah.
And so we attempted to to be in those bills, you know, and those publicities,
Yeah.
and we wanted to really play there. But we were a young band, and also, I guess it was very hard for us to get the gigs.
We didn't have manager, and we didn't. Well, very few bands had, but at least they pretended to have. It was like they always had a friend that wanted to be a manager because he was a fan of the band. But we didn't even have that, right? We have we spent a lot of years trying to manage the band and trying to get gigs at the same time and rehearsing.
Yeah,
and
so
practicing.
we practiced and rehearsed, and then we also took our own photos, and, and then we did our press kit, and it was we
Yes.
played Sunday. Not like it wasn't like non-important gig.
Sunday
My auntie
in
went.
5 months.
So, and that's sometimes we got gigs in some places. There used to be another venue called Rocoditlan, which I think it doesn't exist anymore in
Yeah.
Mexico City. And there we were happy because big bands play, like big bands, like at that time Caifanes or something like that would play there, because it was just like this sort of like cold place, small and intimate. And then they gave us some dates there, but they were always on Monday, and they gave us like a bunch of tickets for us to sell. So we were selling to the people, I don't know, like my
Families,
aunties,
yeah.
families, and friends, and a lot of friends were on the guest list. So, and we were so nervous because of the gig, and then we were trying to practice for that gig, and we were trying to fill the place, but it was just empty. So, but that was the metal years. We also got lucky. At some point, we played like important shows on the metal bills, like those type of festival ones, and so we did a couple of those. And I remember the one that invited us because I was playing there because they were celebrating the Women's International Day. And I think there's a famous band called El Tri in Mexico. And I think the frontman's wife, Chela Lora, she was organizing this big gig with bands that included a girl. So we were invited to that, and she actually paid us. So it was our first gig that we ever got paid.
And it was great show.
And it was a great show, and it was a lot of people. You know, it was just like, I was super nervous.
Yeah.
Because sometimes the audiences in Mexico, at least on that scene at that time,
it's so hard.
if you didn't please them, they would throw stuff at you.
Or the worst was that they would turn their back
If
to
they
the stage.
didn't like the band. So I was terrified that could have happened to our band, but good thing never happened to us. But unfortunately, we saw a lot of bands going through that experience. And then eventually, what happened?
Well, the thing is that process lasted from 92, 93 to 97. And we had two different bands because my brother and the drummer, the ones I started the band with, they left. They got tired of me controlling the whole thing. As you mentioned in the last episode, it was first my brother and myself trying to organize everything, and when you joined the band, it was you and I just organizing the whole thing and writing the music, and they got fed up and they left. And then we hired a couple of new guys, right? New bass player, new drummer.
Well, we didn't hire, because hired is like to pay them. No, we
invited them.
The thing I remember now, at that time, was Nine Inch Nails, White Zombie, all those bands that were like kind of crossover between metal and also electronic music. And so then me and Rod, we came first from metal, you know, like
real
Pantera and all of that. And
Testament.
Carlos says that we're happy with that. We're kind of coming up with music like that. Then We sort of start changing because it was Soundgarden and then it was Pearl Jam
A
and all
little
the
bit of
grunge
grunge,
stuff.
yeah.
So we wanted to sound it like those bands, and then so we came with a bunch of songs that sounded a little bit like that. And Cesar and Algardo were like, oh, okay, so they kind of gave it a go. And then we changed. We wanted to sound like Nine Inch Nails and all of those bands. So we said, oh, we should put some electronics here and there. And that's where Edgardo says, as a
No way.
fake of, we're done with this band.
Can go and play with other.
You can go and play with other people. Ciao, bye bye. So and we were like, oh, this is the right direction. So we met a friend of us, a bass player from another band, Profecia, and so that's where he came in,
Yes.
David, and then we also, I think we got Mauricio,
Yeah.
who
the
introduced
drums.
us to Mauricio. I have
I
no
don't
idea,
know.
I can't remember. But those two guys were happy to give it a go with all this crazy electronic bullshit that it was just like, I mean,
It was very difficult. We didn't even have the right equipment, like gear, to do it. I remember I did most of that demo in Pro Tools, like the very early versions of Pro Tools in '94. No, 90. Yeah, '96 actually. And so we used to have like ADATs, no, DAT, DAT. So we would actually just trigger. We had one show. We played one show together. Remember?
and it went wrong.
It went wrong, and
And even I saw, I
Yeah,
think
White
we saw
Zombie
White Zombie
in
did the
MTV Music Awards,
the
yeah.
same horrible experience in MTV Music Awards. So
Yeah.
this electronic shit,
Yeah, yes.
pista, it went.
it was John Tempesta, which is a great friend of ours now. He was the
Ah.
drummer in White Zombie, and he couldn't hear. I mean, he already told me the story. He just lost it.
Mm-hmm.
It was went
And
so
to
bad.
me,
Yeah.
that was a big, that's why I guess now I play acoustic. I don't like to do any loop pedals or anything because that experience was so traumatic.
Yeah.
Because we had great expectations because on that little album that we recorded, with all this new music that it was heavy but also was very with all these electronic things, and we actually got a sponsor, which was the first time ever happened to us. So a guy would trust our work and said, I like this album, I can put some money in. He paid the recording. So we were so happy, and me and Rod felt like, oh, this is it. Now we are in the right direction, and we were all over the moon. So we recorded an album. We liked the tunes. We thought the tunes were amazing, and then eventually we got this guy had good connections with TV, so we launched the album in this place, and he invited
Some
a lot of
journalists,
press.
yeah.
So it was like the first time ever, and then this stupid shit
Didn't work.
didn't work. So
It was probably in one song. I don't remember, but yeah, it wasn't a good show.
yeah, so it was,
And
it
I
just
remember
gave a
we-
very bad taste.
But I think it was interesting, all the process, because we learned a lot. And I went to, this guy paid for me to go to San Francisco to master the album. And to me, that trip was like life-changing in a way. It was like, it's possible, this can actually happen. I mean, that wasn't the right way for us back in the day, but I felt like super professional, going to San Francisco and master the demo, the album, and then coming back and the album was never released, right? That album from that band, Tierra Ácida's second phase, it was never released.
No, and then because
Yeah.
basically once you get everything, you supposedly getting everything right,
We never
and
got
that's
a
when
label.
we got it right. I must say that on the meantime, all these metal years, we were not living from the band. We were not making.
What were you
a
doing, Gab?
living. I was surviving, and at that time I used to live in like a student house with other students, which I wasn't a student, but I was among the students in this
starting
house.
life.
Yeah, it was like a guest house, I guess, and I also I made a living giving lessons to very very young kids, like they wanted to learn some Metallica riffs or something like that. And I did that, and also our friend, the bass player, the new bass player, his mom was a politician, so she was working in a sort of office building, government uh, uh, stuff, and so he got me a little job there, which I don't know what I was doing there, because
To date, you know.
but, I don't know. And like we were doing nothing on that office, and I was just
Of course,
going
it was a
government
office.
office. It was nobody was doing anything, and then but that's another
I was
story. But
I was doing some with my brother. The first half of Tierra Ácida with my brother, we kind of kept it going with business that we. I don't know how did that come about, but we used to sell sandwiches to the shops.
that's
We would make sandwich and then sell them in the morning. and then it was lasted, I don't know how long, like a year, 2 years maybe. And then I went to work for a TV station, like playing music, like doing music for the TV station.
and editing
And
all
editing
of that,
and all
right?
that. That's how I learned to use Pro Tools in 96, 95, 96. But
So in the meantime, we were just playing with the band,
Yeah.
and the reason we were just so hopeful with the band, it was all our hopes and dreams invested in the band. And so once we got the sponsor and we got the album we wanted, and we wanted this cover, and we designed the cover and everything, and once we had all of that, life, it seemed to us very tough at that time, which is now it's kind of ridiculous to think that it was tough, but it wasn't really. But in our head, was, because we were living. You lived so far away from the TV station, like
Yes.
2-3 hours going on metro.
no,
go
not
back
well,
to
2 3 hours a day traveling. Yeah,
traveling,
yeah.
and then
Mexico
and
City is just
Mexico
crazy.
City, and so to me it was at that point that, you know what, maybe we can. I said, well, we don't go to the beach and forget about all of this. We live like in a tropical paradise. We were, and I remember we had the band and we always played the acoustic guitars. On that album, the last Tierra Asia album, at the end of that album, we had a ballad playing with the two acoustic
That's right.
guitars, and you actually sang. And the lyrics said something like this new beginning coming in, or something like this new awakening, or something. And the whole album had a theme similar to the Metavolution
Yes,
album.
and the cover of that album, what was it?
It was a volcano. So it was another mountain. Now we're kind of like,
Yeah,
oh,
we actually
connecting the
didn't know
dots.
this or didn't remember this like a year ago when we worked on Metavolution.
So
Yeah.
I got the idea. This volcano at that time, called Popocatépetl, is the guardian of Mexico City, and there's a beautiful legend behind this, because there's another mountain that forms this sleeping woman, which means a sleeping woman in Popocatépetl. They were a couple at some point. This is the legend, right? So this Popocatépetl started to awaken on those years, and explosions and earthquakes, and so it was very active. But people from Mexico City, including us, that we called ourselves Chilangos, everything can happen, but you keep going with your life. You don't go like, oh, let's get.
The threat was actually serious.
It was
I
a
mean,
serious
still,
threat.
you know,
But that's how we come up with the idea to
yeah, from that album.
from that
Yeah.
the cover album, that this volcano was about to explode a new world, and this new world was symbolized by this baby, kind of fetus baby, that we kind of
Just
managed to put,
kind of
overput it
exposed,
inside of the volcano. So that was the concept, and at the end of this album, we had this piece of music that it was played by me and Rodrigo on the two acoustic guitars, and they had like this melancholic sort of melody and lyrics about a new world, something new is coming, something is gonna explode, and it's gonna be great. And so we decided one day, like, let's forget about all of these years. I think we're not going anywhere with this band. We love music. We love playing guitar, and at that time we were just jamming for the love of being jamming. A lot of acoustic stuff, the two of us.
Yeah.
And at some point we kind of realized, like, one day we kind of realized that, oh, this might actually be like more friendly to the ear to a lot of people, and it's good, we love it, but maybe people like it too.
Yeah, it's just but a couple of points on that, and because it's actually going too long, and before we finish this episode,
Oh, that's right.
yeah, it's important to remember that the first phase of Tierra Ácida ended up. Remember how we ended that phase?
Yes,
What happened?
we
Quick.
we said real quick. We said let's do our last gig. So
Yes.
we did our last gig and we invited everybody, and now everybody, our friends, family members, they came in. Even my
Hold on. That's the second Tierra Ácida phase. I'm talking the first one with Cesar, my brother.
I don't remember that one.
This was what happened. We recorded a video, which probably you'll see. Like, we can put the link here, and one of the venues kind of gave us an award.
That's right.
Yeah, I don't even know, new
The,
band.
the
or whatever.
first one and the only one.
The first one and the only one, and we went to the party. Only Gab and I, because already the band was kind of.
Yeah, they were Cesar and Edgardo
Yeah,
were just like.
but these three songs, they were the best songs we did together. Absolutely, no doubt. They were cool songs. And then we went to receive the prize. And 1 in the morning, we left the venue. We took a taxi together, and we got robbed. It was such a scary moment. Because we were in the taxi, and then another guy jumped in, and we were like, fuck, and this is Mexico City back in the day. So thank God they only took my leather jacket or whatever I was wearing, and nothing, right? And they were like,
We had 100 pesos.
Yeah.
And even the guy said, are you risking everything for 100 pesos?
yeah, exactly.
And we said, okay, yeah. So they left us there. It was super, super scary.
scary.
And that was a moment we said, okay, this is the symbol that we need to go.
We need to go. And then we kind of, that first half of the band phase finished. Then all this thing happened, the new demo, and with the volcano and all that. And then we had the last gig, which was in Mexico City. I don't know the venue.
And it was in Mexico City Center.
And it was full because it was like a full event. It wasn't our show. Like a few bands were playing, and we played 3 songs. The first 2 songs were like normal songs, and the third one was the one Gab was just talking about, the ballad.
So we, with all the other guys, left the stage, and me and Rodrigo stayed on our own for the first time on the stage together.
Yes.
So we played that one. And then I remember my auntie Celia, which is the matriarch of our
Such
family.
a great woman. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, she's beautiful. She's 94.
Super strong and
so strong, and she's a character. And then she said to me, "This is what you should be doing, the 2 of you only with the acoustic guitars." And I didn't thought, because but then she saw it.
We ended up doing it. But let's leave it here.
Yeah, let's leave it here to be continued. So see you for the next chapter.
Yes, and see you next Friday. Thank you to all our sponsors.
Thanks
that
to
we
our
don't have.
No, but honestly, I think you guys have been so fantastic to us all these years. So for us, it's our pleasure to. Me and Rodrigo, we generally don't like to talk about it because we're just like, we want to keep doing what we do because the past is the past. So for many years we didn't want to talk about our story because we thought it's not interesting to anybody, but a lot of people is asking. So, and I think it's interesting enough for us
Of
to
course.
share it with you. And so see you next chapter.
Yes. Adios, amigos.